A new report on BC's carbon tax shows the province's fuel consumption and greenhouse gas emissions fell far faster than the rest of Canada since that tax was brought in 5 years ago. The research think tank Sustainable Prosperity also found the carbon tax had no negative effect on BC's economy. But the report has generated a lot of discussion and some controversy, including right here on Power and Politics, with our regular on-the-money economist Jim Stanford and Ian Lee going at it. They debated the findings earlier this week. Let me show you just a bit of what Ian Lee had to say about the report and its author, Stewart Elgie.
You know, it's like asking the Pope to investigate the utility of the Catholic religion. He's going to come back and tell you it's really good, and he really believes it, okay?
Well, Ian, is there anything wrong with his numbers? That's what we're interested in.
It is causing great damage to the manufacturing sector, great damage to the cement sector, great damage to agriculture.
All right, those comments sparked a reaction from one of the authors, Stewart Elgie. How did the research support the overarching conclusion that a carbon tax has been an environmental and an economic success? And would it have had the same results at a national level? Joining me now, one of the authors of the report, Stewart Elgie, is a professor of law and economics at the University of Ottawa, and Ian Lee, an assistant professor at Carleton University Sprott School of Business and a member of our On the Money panel. Good to see both of you. Stewart Elgie, let me start with you. You wanted to get back at this after Jim Stanford and Ian had a go at this, and you didn't feel that the assessment of your case was done in a fair enough manner. Make the case for the BC carbon tax as being an effective way to reduce greenhouse gas emissions?
Well, I'll tell you what the research says. I mean, climate change is one of the biggest issues of our time, environmentally, economically. We've had a lot of hot air in Canada politically about a carbon tax the last 5 years, so BC actually brought one in, and we wanted to look at what effects it had actually had. Here's what we found. After 4 years, BC's fuel use is down 17% compared to the rest of Canada. Emissions are down by almost as much. Rest of Canada, they went up. So a big environmental success. On the economy, BC's GDP tracked consistently with the rest of Canada over that time. So some people better off, some a little worse off, but overall, no adverse economic effect. In the end, BC's shown that they've tackled one of the biggest environmental problems of our time without harming the economy, and the key is it's a carbon tax shift. So all the revenue from the carbon tax goes right out the door to income tax cuts, and BC now has the lowest income taxes in Canada, which is why there's a really positive economic stimulus with the environmental measures.
What's the problem with that analysis in your view, Ian?
Right. I want to deal with it in two parts. Just deal methodologically, and by the way, I'm not suggesting that there's anything wrong with Stewart's study. I'm just saying in approximately 10 pages, you cannot dissect an economy deeply that is almost $250 billion, that is a very sophisticated and advanced economy. It needs a full-fledged econometric treatment by, StatsCan or something like that. So I'm not disputing what Stewart did. It's just that in 10 pages, you just simply can't deal with the complexity of the economy. That's a methodology issue. Now let me deal with the substance. Okay, let's deal with the substance. I really have three objections to the carbon tax, recognizing that in theory it works. I don't dispute the literature, okay, but there's three problems with the carbon tax. Number one, it's a hidden tax. It's not a transparent tax. It's imposed upstream, and then it cascades down through the supply chain, unbeknownst to consumers, and we don't see it other than a general price in the increase in the goods. That's the first problem. The second problem is it puts businesses in that economy, in this instance BC, at a competitive disadvantage because foreign competitors coming into BC are not subject to the carbon tax. And the third problem, and this is really my fundamental problem, and the BC Chamber of Commerce has alluded to this, and I've spoken about it before. That is to say, it deals with the, and I don't want to get wonky, but the elasticity of demand for energy. To put it bluntly or more plainly, it's our sensitivity to price. We know from 40 years of experience in North America, all of us are very sensitive to price increase at the retail pump for cars. And that's why we've all switched from gas-guzzling monster boats in the 60s that got 6 miles a gallon to Honda Civics. But very quickly, in other parts of the economy, we are not sensitive. We have a low elasticity of demand. Concretely, 51% of Canadians use natural gas to heat their house. I am not going to switch to something else because there's nothing else to switch to, which is the premise of a carbon tax, and I'm not going to turn down the thermostat to 5 or 10 degrees because the carbon tax went through. What I'm going to do is grit my teeth, pay the price, and divert money from some other part of my expenditure
So let's get a response on that, Stewart.
Well, I mean, your issue is with Stats Canada, not with me, right? But the numbers are what they are, and the numbers are that BC's fuel use across every type of fuel subject to the carbon tax, home heating oil, gasoline fuel, diesel, propane, coking coal, has gone down significantly. And it happens in many ways. They've had 5 years to begin planning and making changes. When people are thinking about buying a new car, they'll buy a more fuel-efficient car. People are more likely to insulate their home. They may take the bus more often. Businesses may change their fuel sources. All kinds of changes. There's no one massive change that's done this. It's a price effect that ripples across. And guess what? When European countries have done the same kind of thing, they've had similar results. When you shift taxes and you put a tax on pollution while lowering taxes on income, emissions go down. And they go down more than just the price of gas. That's been the result of every study on the effects of pollution taxes. It has a bigger effect than the price itself.
I don't. A lot of it we're in agreement on. You've used most of your examples were from the transportation sector. There is no doubt that we are very sensitive to transportation.
Well, what about the home heating?
But on the home heating, within home heating, yes, if you tell me people will switch from coal to gas if you can use coal,
BC doesn't use coal.
Or from oil, I agree. But for the 51, I'm just using this, 51% of us have switched to natural gas. There's nothing to switch to beyond natural gas, A, and I'm not, when I say I don't think most Canadians, everybody at home, think of this. It's January, it's minus 25, and the carbon tax has gone through. Do you really think you're going to change your thermometer from 20 degrees down to 10 or 5?
Ian, you need a home energy audit, my friend. There's lots of things you can do.
I've already done them all.
Well, you should implement them.
I've
done them. You can
insulate
your house, you can change your furnace, you can change your windows, you can caulk them. That stuff makes a big difference.
But I've already done all those things, and many of us have.
Your examples say that nobody can do it. There's all kinds of things people can do, and all they need is an economic incentive to push them in that direction. And guess what? The carbon tax has done that. And I mean, the data is what it is.
Let's get to the political side. Hang on. Let me just get to the political side. Ian, hang on.
Okay.
The government has said, the federal government, there's a job-killing carbon tax. That is the expression. Stewart's study suggested it hasn't been a job killing. In fact, it's had no adverse effect, and it's also contributed to lowering, according to the study, lowering greenhouse gas emissions, no adverse economic effects, and not a very complicated administrative function.
Right.
So does that case study mean we should be considering it, or the federal government should be considering it on a national level?
What it means is that we need a very solid, a very comprehensive, extensive econometric analysis. This isn't about delaying for hundreds of years. Stats can put one of these studies together and do it in, what, a year or so? And I mean, put a lot of resources, some very sophisticated econometricians that are going to control for these variables. Many of the examples Stewart provided as examples, we don't know it was caused by the carbon tax. He is confusing correlation with causation.
All right, so let me...
I'm not confusing anything. I'll agree with you, and if you read the study, which you should,
I did.
It says in
Read
there,
it 4 times.
We cannot say that all this change is because of the carbon tax. I've said that, you'll know. But what I said is we've looked at the data 4 different ways. We looked at the trend lines before 2008, no change. After 2008, big change. We looked at every type of fuel subject to the tax. It applied to all of them. We compared it to other provinces so that you could factor out the changes in the economy. Again, we've done all we can to try to control for some of the variables you say. I agree with you. Over time, we should do a more sophisticated analysis, and we're already starting that. We'll have the results in about a year.
I got 30 seconds.
Okay.
What about when people say, and Ian has said this, for example, the concrete industry is hurt by a carbon tax. They're not as competitive. So do you have to overall trade off losses for some industries for gains for others?
Here's the point, Reid. I was on CBC yesterday with the head of BC Business Council, Jock Finlayson. He said, I agree with Elgie. This hasn't had an overall adverse effect on the economy. There have been some sectors that have been hurt, but some have benefited. When you lower income taxes and corporate taxes, that helps the economy. So heavy fuel users are a little worse off. Lots of other people and businesses are better off in BC.
All right.
Very quickly, I want to respond.
Real quick.
Right after Wednesday on the money, I went and by fluke, I read Mark Jacquard, who had written a blog on your study. And he said, his position's, I think, the same as mine. He said a good study, but he said, I will not tell any politician that a carbon tax is the only way we can achieve carbon emission reductions. There are a multiplicity of ways.
I agree.
And
the study doesn't say it's the only way. The question is...
It's the most cost-effective way.
And because of the blowback, the divisiveness that carbon taxes cause, very few countries have adopted it. It suggests that there are other ways that are going to be politically more palatable.
Over 20 countries have adopted it.
talking North America. Australia just killed
South Africa just brought one in. Japan just brought one in. Ireland just brought one in. Italy just brought one in.
And
6
BC
European
and
countries
Alberta
have it.
one.
Our
Alberta
largest
has one.
trading partner in the world,
The US.
next door, the United States of America, and Barack Obama says he's an environmentalist, but yet he won't put through a carbon tax. If it's so good,
if the US
why won't they
is
do
the
it?
benchmark for responsible environmental and economic policy, we're all in
But
trouble.
we export three-quarters of our
I've
exports
got
to
to
them.
get there,
Let's do
but
better
the
than them
question
then.
is, and just
Let's
to
do
make,
better than the US.
Well, I'll leave this to our viewers. Is it a political issue, or is it an economic issue? I mean, you have to decide. Is it a political problem you've got with it? Is it an economic problem, or is it an environmental problem? Lots of questions left, but that study, now we've had a couple days on it. Stewart Elgie, Professor of Law and Economics at the University of Ottawa. Ian Lee, Assistant Professor at Carleton University Sprott School of Business. Good debate today. Thanks, gents.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ian.
Thanks.